and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking three powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me is Mike Weiss. Mike is a third-generation music industry executive with vast experience spanning A&R, artist management, marketing, strategy, and operations. Currently, he serves as the Vice President of Music and Head of A&R at UnitedMasters, the global independent music company that provides premium distribution services and facilitates unique partnerships between artists and the world's biggest brands. Mike runs the Artist Partner label business and has been instrumental in building the division since its inception, including signing mega artist Brent Faiyaz. And prior to UnitedMasters, he was an artist manager at Maverick Management, developing the careers of Noah Cyrus and Labyrinth, achieving platinum records and billions of streams. So Mike, super excited to have you join 3Q and answer these three questions. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Let's jump right in. Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give him on a personal note? And what one piece of advice would you give him from a business perspective?
I would say if I'm sitting down with a 25-year-old me, I would imagine that the advice would be fairly similar on a business and personal front. I think on the personal front, I would say that just kind of be of service to other people without without any expectations of anything in return. When I was 25, it was definitely a focus for me to really start building my career, to build my artists. Everything was about like, how is this going to help my artists get further in their careers? How is it going to help them get to that next feature, that next big single, that next placement, that next tour? And how do I make sure that their businesses are optimized? And that very much kind of put me in tunnel vision and probably made me a bit more selfish or self-centered or focused on just what I could do for me and my artists. And so kind of personally, the same applies. I don't know if I'm saying this more from a business or personal perspective, but once you start doing things just for providing value to others with no expectation of anything in return, the universe seems to work in mysterious ways. And some of the most significant aspects of my career have happened as a result of that. Some of the most significant parts of my personal life have happened as a result of that. And so it's definitely a key component that it's not just going straight for the end result. It's going for, a path that you can be of service to other people and really provide value. That's most important. So yeah, I'd say probably same answer to both. And I'd also say like the next 5-7 years are going to be all right.
So what led you from making the jump from artist management to a company like UnitedMasters?
Yeah, so that was a very difficult decision. I would say it was difficult to leave artist management. I absolutely loved my artists. I loved them personally, loved their talent, their drive, their success. I loved just kind of, everything about those artists. And ultimately, I had to make the decision of what was kind of right for me and where I needed to transition. I like to apply the philosophy that we do what's right, not what's easy. And I follow my gut in those difficult situations and difficult times. And my gut was telling me that leaving management at the time was what was right, even though it was one of the most difficult things, if not the most difficult thing I've ever done. Especially since there was such kind of agency in that decision, and we were having success and things were going well. But management's a really challenging business. It's something that you put a lot of sacrifice in. You give up a large portion of your life. You're traveling a lot. It makes it really difficult to have a consistent routine or balance. For me, I'd say to go to UnitedMasters was really kind of a gut decision. I was speaking with a number of other management companies at the time, and then sat down with Steve Stout. And for me, it was I love building things. I love building artists. I love starting with an artist from early days. When I started managing Noah Cyrus, she was 15 and had only recorded one song in her life. Labyrinth was at kind of a key point where he had finished his like Tiny Tempa era, and was figuring out who he should be as an artist. And that was very much this organic build. And so sitting with Steve, he had this incredible idea of where the future of music was going, the future of independence. I had a shared vision as to how the traditional record label system was a bit antiquated in not necessarily the services provided, but in the structure of the deals and the barrier to entry to get a deal and all these different elements that I felt like were going to start being innovated over time. Um, and I knew that I had the ability to really operationalize that business and that vision for Steve. Um, and the vision that I saw myself. And so it was really my gut told me, like, here's a business that is well funded, has an amazing leader at the top, has all of the right vision and kind of, target of where they want to go, but don't necessarily know how to get there. And I see a path for how we get there. I'm at a point in my career where I could take a risk like that and go to a company that's very much brand new and unproven. And if it goes great, then fantastic. If it doesn't, on to the next. But was very fortunate that it has gone really, really well so far.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think more times than not, your gut is what's going to give you the right answer.
Absolutely.
All right. Moving along to our second question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and you and I both know that it is no different in the music industry. Sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can be good. What's one secret you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
I would say the taste and hard work. There's two kind of sides of it, right? People don't necessarily, I don't know if these are big secrets, but there are two kind of approaches to the business, and I'd imagine that the answer lies somewhere in between, with balance. But there are those in this industry who are really focused on charging down a path of kind of like doing what's right from an artist career perspective. And when I say right, both sides are right. There are two separate paths for what is right. But there are those that say, like, here's what we need to sign because this artist is phenomenal and we believe in the artist and it's going to be a build and we're going to have to bring on the right team and we're going to have to do all of these different things and it needs to be in service to the artist. On the flip side, the music industry is very much a network is your net worth game. And so there becomes in all of these situations that balance between how do you, if you always do 100% what is like, let's go for this artist that we believe in 100% and disregard the people that are involved, there is a element where you may have great artists but not great relationships, and then that doesn't provide you any value, or you go completely the other direction throughout that period and go, let me, purely sign this artist because I want to continue to build a relationship with this manager. I want to do all these things. And then in that regard, you may have great relationships, but you don't necessarily have, the great roster, the great artists, and both are essential. You need to be able to have that balance of both. But there are different people that have different paths in which way they start, which way they go. If they go more relationship first, which is kind of service to other people in the industry, which nothing wrong with. And then there's ones that are artists first, where it's service to kind of how to build the best artists to become the biggest superstars with the disregard. And I find that those that get too successful too quickly early on typically do it by going down one of the two paths and then have a lot of trouble with transitioning to something else after that first initial artist success or that first initial job success, because they haven't been able to really properly balance the two.
Well, we are at our final and third question. So, throughout your career, I can only imagine you've been asked plenty of questions, whether for industry conferences, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, there has to be one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So, what is that question and what would be your answer?
I would say, what is kind of the unique skill set that you bring to the table that is different than, or more niche, I guess, than what everybody else brings to the table? And I would say, there's a certain element to artist development that I absolutely love. And that is that an artist brand has to be built with real concrete vision. It has to be intentional. It has to be strategic, because you're essentially taking, and I guess my skill set in that is that I know how to take an artist who is, at the end of the day, all an artist is a multifaceted human being, just like every single one of us, that feels different every single day, just like every one of us, and try and boil them down into kind of like a key vision of who they are and who their brand is as an artist, to see kind of one face of that diamond and make it easy, digestible, clear, and most importantly, authentic to the artist. And so my skill set is that I look to really build cohesive brand community narrative around an artist. And really I look at that skill set as being almost like an archaeologist in many ways. Like I go in there and I use like a toothbrush to wipe away the sand that is that artist persona that already exists, that's there, that just needs the right exposure to the right points in order for people to really be able to connect with an artist. I mean, you look at the biggest artists in the world, and in many ways, they're almost like TV characters these days. They have very clear personas, personalities. And the most important thing is not necessarily what they do, but it's whether it is on brand or not. If you're a multifaceted human being, which all of us are, some things are on brand for some people someday, and some things are off brand because we feel different each day. But the artist persona needs to be a lot simpler and more consistent than the complexities of the human mind, And so being able to boil that down where, with Labyrinth, it's a clear brand of he's this kind of mad scientist, super genius that lives almost on another planet in another world. And everything kind of has to revolve around that, not necessarily be targeted to do that. If he is doing something, it needs to kind of check that box of, does this make sense for an artist that's like this? If no, you kind of put it to the side. Noah was like, in early days, Noah was kind of the dark, depressed pop girl who was the misfit of her perfect Hollywood family. And it was like, if she is that, then whatever we're doing needs to kind of fall in line with that so that there is a cohesive understanding of who she is as an artist. And while it doesn't necessarily need to be easily articulated by the audience and by the fans, they need to feel it. And my belief is that once you can build that, you can build fandom, you can build community, you can build a real artist. And then once the hits come, then it's over. You have a superstar. And that's fundamentally the major difference between an artist who has had zero development, a TikTok hit that is here today, gone tomorrow. One song they put out explodes. The next song does, 5,000 streams, and the artist that can consistently release, build fans, build a touring business, grow their audience, and then are just looking for that big moment. But whether they have the big moment or not, they're going to have a career. And to me, especially in this day and age, it's more important to go deep than it is to go wide, because we don't have 5 television channels like the 60s. We don't have just the main radio stations. There are millions, if not billions, of channels if you include TikTok, everyone's personal TikTok and Instagram and all that. And so it's about what impact you create rather than eyeballs. And if you can create impact and eyeballs, fantastic. But if you have to choose one, go with impact. I hope that was a good answer to that. I don't know.
So well said.
Awesome.
So real quick, before we close it out, what would you say to an artist that is making an impact, but it's just not clicking for them for whatever reason, and they're just super discouraged about it?
I would say that if you're making an impact, just continue driving towards that. Find the things that work, and all artist development now exists in the public eye. And so it's not like 10 years ago where you develop an artist and put the work in and make the records and then put out the big record. You put out every single record that comes in that process. And so if you're starting to see impact, if you're starting to see people really connect to you and feel not alone by being, a part of your fandom or listening to your music, even if it's 10 people, understand what it is that those people are connecting to and continue to build it brick by brick. There's no such thing as overnight success. Everything requires real consistency, a real build, real work at the forefront in order to have a long-term sustainable career. And if you're starting to see any impact at all, it means you're on the right path. It's going to take time to get those numbers and that exposure, but continue pushing that forward.
Amazing. Well, it's about time we close out this episode. So, Mike, thanks again for joining me. And to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for next week of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. See you next time.